Hello again everyone, I am back once again in LYNE, and you'll notice this time I am actually using the Deep Space palette instead of the original or classic palette. I just unlocked that recently and feel like using this instead. Today I am going to be going through set E. If you would like me to go through any of the previous sets, like A and B are pretty much tutorial sets that get you through the basics of playing the game, but if you would like me to go back through sets C and D, and do a walkthrough or tutorial video of that, then please leave a comment in below and I will get to that. But for today I will be doing set E, basically playing through that. You can use this video as a walkthrough. You are free to mute the video if you would like to do so. Otherwise I will be discussing the topic of free-to-play versus pay-to-win games. So without further ado, let's get started on LYNE set E. So one of the things that is typically defined by games nowadays, more so than they used to be in the past, is the idea of free-to-play, which is more and more prevalent in today's games rather than the typical subscription fee. And the reason for this is quite simply that free-to-play games nowadays are actually more profitable than the subscription games. And you might ask, well, how? Well, the reason being that is the cash shops. So the cash shop options actually generate more of the profit than you would necessarily get from a subscription fee. The problem with this is this generates a lot of times where the game becomes a pay-to-win game, where you're basically paying money in order to have content that's going to allow you to win the game, rather than paying for the subscription fee. So one of the companies that's that's actually known for this a lot is Aria Games. Aria has a lot of games that are fairly good games like War Tune and Scarlet Blade, but the problem with these games is how you play or how much you're able to do is determined by how much you pay for in-game content, even though the game itself is actually free. For example, Scarlet Blade by itself is actually a fairly good game, and I do enjoy playing it in the time that I basically played the game. The problem existed that in order to upgrade your equipment, in order to be relevant, you ended up having to shell out more and more money for the upgrade stones that you needed. So that created a problem where you were playing a game that was, while you could play it and enjoy it, especially since one of the areas that you had quests to do in order to get levels up and continue out the game, one of those areas was predominantly a PvP area where PvP was enabled, and you couldn't go, and that area was enabled PvP regardless. You could not go anywhere and say, okay, in that area and say, okay, I don't want a PvP even though I'm here. That wasn't going to work because that area, access to that area was PvP only. Or I should say, being in that area, you had PvP turned on by default and could not turn it off. So this generated an issue where people who had the great equipment and all that kind of stuff were able to basically just camp people within that particular spot on the map and be perfectly fine, and have it and basically have that advantage of just because PvP was such a central part of that game at that point. It became a situation where people that had all that overpowered equipment from paying a whole bunch of money got a major advantage that they wouldn't necessarily have had otherwise. So how am I going to do this? So let's figure this out here. How am I going to do this particular level? So I've got to go through here twice with something. Because this blue line is going to be there regardless. There's no way for me to get up and get up to these hexagons here. Octagons, sorry. and get an additional line in there. So I gotta figure out how I'm gonna do this. Because I need the line to go through here at least twice. Oh, I'm done. There it is. It was right in front of my face. Anyways, back onto the topic of free-to-play versus pay-to-win. Again, games like that, Mario was very much known for it, just because that's the games that happen to be the games that they ran. Like Warrior and Scarlet Blade, which were actually fairly enjoyable games in their own right by themselves, just playing them. The problem existed. The fact was that if you didn't pay money into the game, you were pretty much screwed from the standpoint of you didn't have what you needed in order to compete at a level to be relevant in the game, because the other people around you would have buffed equipments from all the money they spent. And one of the things that so you win by amount of money spent rather than your individual skill, which is not really conducive for a very good environment when it comes to playing games. Because it's like, oh, I paid more money than you, thereby I win. And that's not really a healthy environment for any gaming world. So there are games that do have a cash shop option, but aren't necessarily as dependent on you spending that money in order to win or be relevant, which is games like these are typically actually more along the lines of trading card games that you'll find is that while you can pay to get cards or packs or whatever, you don't necessarily have to pay in order to get that same kind of content. A couple games along these lines are actually Hearthstone, which is a new Warcraft-based trading card game using heroes from the Warcraft franchise, where you can pay money to get all those different to get new packs, but you could also just grind out the game and for the most part get every single get all the content still by just playing and grinding out levels, grinding out cards. Well, there are a couple exceptions. There are a couple cards that you only get by paying and basically getting those packs early, or rather paying for that content. And there was there's an offer during open beta right now, such as where if you pay for said cards, you get by paying for said cards, you get a special premium card, or like with Rise of Mythos, which is also a trading card game along these lines, is where you get while you can while you can still get most of the cards, you get additional VIP benefits, and you get basically additional VIP benefits and additional packs that you can get, but for the most part you can still get all the cards just by grinding out levels and grinding out for gold, which is their particular currency. Rise of Mythos is a little bit more dependent on getting that, on paying in order if you want to win, because a lot of those times the people who have paid and have VIP access will be able to get additional cards a little bit easier and have a lot more of them. So there is that factor when it comes to Rise of Mythos over other games like Hearthstone or things of that nature. But but it's similar to where the fact where you don't quite have to pay to win, even though it's all the way there. Then you have the more traditional free-to-play games that are truly free-to-play, and an example of this are games. Going back to the model of free-to-play or pay to win. The idea of paying for content tend to work a little bit better for trading card games and RPGs in relation of fairness, because of the fact that simply if you're allowed to pay for gear that is so incredibly powerful that nobody else has a chance of fighting you because you have that OP gear, then that becomes a little bit more of a problem than say, okay, I have these additional cards, and that's where my power is. Although you can still beat me just because you can also have those cards, not quite to that complete level, but you'll still have some kind of fighting chance in order to compete at a level that you need to in order to be competitive in that game. Let's see here. Now I'm going to need somehow. I'm not sure how I'm going to go about this. That seems about right for the yellow line here. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so there's that level. Anyways, back to what I was discussing. That model tends to work a little bit better for trading card games in terms of overall fairness, because of the fact of as long as people can still obtain cards without having to worry necessarily about constantly needing the most powerful card whatsoever in order to have a shot. In other words, they can still get the same packs. It's just faster to invest that money in order to have said card. So for fairness standpoint, it works a little bit better for trading card games. As the issues with pay-to-win RPGs, typically RPGs, especially MMOs, are characterized a lot of by grinding out levels for gear, or just grinding out a whole bunch of dungeons over and over and over in order to get the gear that you need. Well, you'll see a lot more of So how am I going to do this one? Well, that has to go. The original has to go through both this line. So I go like this. Okay, that's about right. Okay. As especially going back to what I was saying again. RPGs are especially MMOs, are very defined by grinding for gear, grinding out dungeons, all those kind of different aspects, especially of the game, that making a game where you have to pay in order to get the gear you need, or in order to upgrade the gear that you need, creates a very specific issue in the fact that you have to. There's no way really to get the gear that you need otherwise, where you run into the issue that you have to pay for those gear upgrades, and if you don't have money to invest, or you can't pay because say you're a kid that wants to play that likes playing the game, but you don't have a credit card and your parents don't want to pay for it, then you run into the issue where you can't really enjoy playing the game because you're never going to be able to compete at that level. Simply because you don't have the money or you don't have the resources available to pay for what you need. Well, so that's a big issue that comes up a lot with pay-to-win RPGs. The fact that simply, if you don't have the money, then you're pretty much screwed over, and you can't compete. You can't compete in that game on a level that you would normally like to. Because there's games that have similar to that kind of factor, whereas you don't. It's a subscription-based game, but you still have the issue that you need to. How am I going to describe this here? You still need to, as it were, pay for not necessarily real money, but a lot of it is driven by economy from a standpoint of gear power overrides level power. So you'll have an issue of somebody where you're basically a player and you're level 100, but because you don't have the gear, you still can't beat somebody level 50 who's hacked. But anyways, that's set E, a quick walkthrough video of that, or rather playthrough. You can use that, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if you want me to do a walkthrough of set C or D, or if you want to see continued walkthroughs with commentary of the continuous as I go on, then please subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for future videos that will come in through LYNE. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please click the like, and again, if you want to see more, please click the subscribe button. You guys have a good day, and I hope you enjoyed the video.